The 2010 Electoral Act, Section 91, Subsection 2, puts the spending limit by candidates for the presidential election at 1 billion naira. But reports show that this directive has not been adhered to by these political parties in the past. As we approach the 2019 elections, of which campaigns have started in earnest, are we going to have a repeat of unchecked spending by political parties? Who is expected to monitor campaign budgets and spending? And what is the role of INEC, political parties, election observers, and the media in ensuring compliance to this directive? This is what Panorama from the Lagos Network Center shall be focusing on today. I am Dotun Ogunyemi. We'll be right back. President Muhammadu Buhari has described the momentum of his election victory in 2015 as synonymous with the revolt of the Nigerian people against glaring endemic corruption. He therefore vowed to remain steadfast as ensuring that those who plundered the nation's commonwealth are held to account for their actions, as efforts to promoting integrity and transparency in the process of government continues. This was while declaring the corruption risk assessment training for heads of anti-corruption agencies in the African Union in Abuja open. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo has details.
Corruption risk assessment is one of the preventive tools usually employed towards blocking systemic loopholes which provide opportunity for corruption, especially in the public sector. Heads of anti-corruption agencies from across Africa are here to be empowered with this special skill to cascade it down to their various countries as part of Nigeria's contributions towards minimizing corruption on the continent. The African Union anti-corruption champion, President Muhammadu Buhari, at whose instance the training program is being held, said it is an opportunity to extend the benefits of the corruption risk assessment methodology already deployed in Nigeria to other African countries.
No efforts can be too much as we seek to rid our societies of the evil of corruption. This training session is essentially an orientation on the benefits of deploying the corruption risk assessment methodology in the fight against corruption. Thus, I urge participants to embrace it and also take steps to widen the knowledge and skills imparted by supporting the training of risk assessors for their countries.
The president described as heartwarming that most of the African countries have already subscribed to not only the United Nations Convention Against Corruption, but also the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption.
The fight against corruption is a battle for the souls of our different countries, and it is one that we must win. Since independence, our continent has suffered from the severe consequences of corruption, and it is imperative that we take steps to reverse the trend.
He said tremendous results have been recorded in the task of instituting integrity and transparency in Nigeria, but the cost of recovery and sanctions are enormous, and corruption is also fighting back.
With enormous stolen resources, elements have attempted to compromise law enforcing institutions and pervert the course of justice. We continue to implement policies aimed at building resilient systems that can withstand assault by corrupt officials.
The Corruption Risk Assessment Training Program is being conducted by the Anti-Corruption Academy of Nigeria, a research and training arm of the ICPC.
ICPC stands on the principle that an ounce of prevention is worth more than a ton of remedy. This is against pursuing individuals
dollars a year. Corruption begets more corruption and fosters a corrosive culture of impunity.
I must as well commend His Excellency's bounding will and fervent commitment in making transparency accountability and integrity, the cornerstone of governance.
Highlights of the opening ceremony was the presentation of the report of the Corruption Risk Assessment of Nigeria's e-government systems by President Muhammadu Buhari. From the State House, Adamu Sambo, NTA News.
As the world marks Anti-Corruption Day, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, says the commission remains committed to winning the war against corruption in the country. Director Operations, EFCC Lagos Zone, Mohammed Abba, stated this at an anti-corruption walk in commemoration of the World's Anti-Corruption Day in Lagos. Abolade Salami reports.
According to the United Nations report, corruption cost the world economy about $2.6 trillion annually. This figure represents more than 5% of the global GDP. It is in view of this that the international body sets aside 9th of December annually to draw attention to the challenge that corruption posed to the world. The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, in its enlightenment campaign against corruption, staged an anti-corruption walk from its Ikoyi office en route to Tafawa Balewa Square to Obalende, where members displayed placards with various inscriptions such as "Say no to corruption, every no counts. We must kill the dreaded monster corruption."
And arguably, corruption is serious crime that can undermine the socio-economic development of any country. Nigeria is not an exception, as corruption is the main reason for her stunted growth. The Commission, under the leadership of Magu, has vowed that there will be no longer any hiding place.
The anti-corruption march also focused on the need to expose illicit deals capable of dragging the country into disrepute among Committee of Nations.
EFCC for the steadfastness in the fight against corruption. Government has been proactive, but we also need a lot of more encouragement.
The Director of Operations, Mohammed Abba, re-emphasized that the Commission will not be deterred in its efforts at curtailing the menace. In Lagos, Abolade Salami, NTA News.
Justice Muslim Hassan of the Federal High Court, sitting at Ikoyi, Lagos, has ordered the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, to effect service of charge on the Nigerian Bar Association President, Paul Usoro, following the order or inability of the EFCC to arraign Mr. Usoro over alleged 1.4 billion naira fraud against him. Vera Chiumba has more.
The NBA President, Paul Usoro, arrived at the court premises shortly before 8 o'clock in the morning in the company of his wife, a team of senior learned advocates and lawyers. The planned arraignment of Mr. Usoro over alleged fraud to the tune of 1.4 billion naira was forestalled following the inability of the EFCC to effect personal service on him. EFCC counsel Rotimi Oyedepo informed the court that attempts to serve Usoro with the charge have not been successful, even when the commission had repeatedly put calls across to him, seeking his presence at the commission's office to effect service on him. He also told the court that service cannot be effected on him in the courtroom because the commission's investigative officer, who is in a position to serve him, is at the commission's office in Abuja. The prosecution counsel, Wale Olanipekun, argued that he had perused the provisions of Administration of Criminal Justice Act and found no section required the presence of a defendant at the commission's office to pick up his charge. He urged the commission to serve him in court. This resulted in a noisy courtroom, but was put under control. Justice Muslim Hassan ordered the EFCC to effect service of charge on the NBA president. He will be arraigned on the 18th of December. In Lagos, Vera Chumba, NTA News.
Meanwhile, the Federal High Court, sitting in Lagos, has ordered the final forfeiture of properties worth 1.8 billion naira belonging to the former executive director of the Niger Delta Development Commission, Tuoyo Omatsuli. Vera Chiumba has more.
Justice Chuka Obiozo had issued an interim order for temporary forfeiture of the properties on the 7th of May following an ex parte application filed by the EFCC. The commission listed the properties and interested parties in the suit to include Westfield Energy Resources Limited, Francis Momo, Don Parker Properties, and Osumole. The court had issued the interim orders and had ordered same to be published in the national dailies for any interested parties to appear and show cause. In his judgment, Justice Obiozo held that from the facts adduced before him, he was satisfied that the properties listed formed part of proceeds of unlawful activities. The court consequently ordered that the properties be forfeited to the federal government. In Lagos, Viera Chumuba, NTA News.
The 2010 Electoral Act, as amended, clearly states how much candidates vying for political office should spend. But with the 2015 election, which has been said to be the most expensive in Nigeria, what is the level of compliance to this directive as we approach the 2019 elections? To discuss this, I have with me in the studio a legal practitioner, Barrister Kolade Olutekunbi. Barrister, you're welcome to Panorama.
Thank you for having me.
Now, so let's talk about why have we had an increased spending during political elections and political campaigns?
Well, I think the first thing to address is the law has made provisions for the limits of expenditure. The question to ask is, how is this rather? And you will see the jamboree carnival attitude of the political party when they want to declare their manifesto or they want to kick-start their campaign. So what you get is just a very reckless and unguided approach to campaigning. So their expenditure needs to be submitted to the authority, which is INEC. INEC need to look at their expenditure through their budgets and also ensure that they comply with what they have stated down. Because what happened, I don't know whether INEC has in advance obtained the budget of this political party and the funding in particular, because this is the time you have more of money laundering from people that are not even politicians, who are their cronies. These are the people that help them to move cash from banks, contractors, government contractors. All these people need to be monitored at this particular time because they are the people that overbloat this so-called expenditure. They receive gifts. This politician, this is the time for them to start receiving gifts. And EFCC must come up with a stringent approach through the BBM of people who are using banking system to no movement of money. Because what you find out is that this is the time for politicians to start collecting feedbacks, kickbacks from contractors. And this is what accounts for this over-bloating expenditure, because the money is available.
Now, also, one of the recommendations after the 2015 elections was that INEC auditors recommended that political parties should create an internal audit mechanism. Do you think that this will go a long way in solving some of this?
Even if they do, they still need to be monitored. They still need to be monitored because you cannot be the one to assess yourself. When the law makes provisions for a standard of behavior, you are not the person that will be the person to now give yourself a score mark of that standard of behavior. The law has created a standard of behavior that you have to spend this maximum amount of money for election. Having said that, then what needs to be done is an independent, whether they have internal auditor or not, they needed someone to oversee that this thing, these provisions is complied with. So the internal auditor may not really help. It won't help because it's an internal issue, and they are the one who are supposed to, be monitored. You don't monitor yourself. If you create a provisions for the doing of an act, and the person who is to do the act, somebody has to ensure that that act is done. It is not the person that is going to do the act that will ensure that he has done the act. Yes, there's a responsibility under the law that individual should do the act. So the political party and the auditors, they have statutory obligation to ensure that they do this in accordance with the law. But infractions, who is to also report that? Is it the same internal auditor? I doubt whether that will work.
Now, what should be the role of political parties in all of this, as well as the media, civil society organizations, to call some of these political parties and candidates to order?
Yes, for the political party, they have a duty and responsibility. And I believe seriously that it is time for the institution to start attracting sanctions. Where sanctions, because the provisions of the law that put a maximum expenditure also need to come up with sanctions. What happens if you spend more than 1 billion?
Well,
there should be a provision for sanctions.
So
then it will guide those political parties.
All right, sir. So some of those sanctions are what we'll be advocating that civil society and the media should take to the political parties and candidates as the elections draw closer. You're still on to Panorama, coming to you from the Lagos Network Center. More reports after this break. Don't go away.
Chief, good morning, sir. You are here already?
No, now my spirit day, my body day for house. What kind of question is that? Were you not the one that fixed this meeting for 8 a.m.? You are now coming by 10 a.m. and start asking me jab questions.
But Chief, now, I'm sorry. Don't you also go late for meetings sometimes? You know now, African time.
No more African time. And no more pancaking of face during office hours. At the end of the day, we will lose valuable time. We will not make progress. If we want to move this nation forward, we must treat business as business and respect time. Change begins with me.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry. Can we go for the meeting now, Chief?
Better.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Many thanks for staying with us. A two-tier presidential intervention structure has been put in place by the federal government towards combating one of the most turbulent societal menaces, drugs and substance abuse. The structure comprises a high-level ministerial committee chaired by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, as well as a presidential advisory committee headed by the retired General Mohammed Buba Marwa. President Muhammadu Buhari, while inaugurating the committee, described the drug menace in Nigeria as a situation of emergency which must be addressed as such. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo reports that the president's wife, Aisha Buhari, is one of the committee members.
High-powered committees comprise several ministers, wives of the president, vice president, and some governors, relevant regulatory and professional agencies, as well as faith-based bodies as members. They have, among other terms of reference, to integrate drugs and substance abuse issues into the extant government policies and initiatives, as well as make recommendations to the federal government on sustainability of interventions needed to totally eliminate the menace in the society. President Muhammadu Buhari described as disheartening that Nigeria, which used to be a transit nation for illicit drugs, is now internationally recognized as a user nation. Statistics reveal that about 3 million bottles of codeine syrup are consumed daily in Kano State and twice that amount across Nigeria.
This is a situation of emergency and we must address it as such. I therefore charge both committees to tackle the task before them with all commitment that it deserves in recognizing their appointments as a clear call to serve the nation. It is our collective national prayer that the labors of our heroes past shall never be in vain in our time and in the foreseeable future.
While restating the alertness of his administration to the dangers associated with drug abuse endemic, the president used the opportunity to commend his wife, Aisha Buhari, for her passion and commitment at galvanizing efforts at addressing the public health problem.
The need for collective action to help those enslaved by drug build a new life with the view to reduce the demand for drugs by reducing its abuse and addiction is more urgent now than ever before. I am assured of your commitment to this national assignment.
The involvement of the First Ladies, President Buhari said, is meant to spur active participation of women and mothers in the crusade against drug abuse in view of the significant role they play in parenting and care.
It is therefore expected that governors' wives across the Federation will take the lead in replicating this intervention structure at the states and local government levels.
Chairman of the High-Level Steering Committee and Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Bosgida Mustafa, assured the President of their commitment to working assiduously towards combating the negative impacts of the drug abuse epidemic in order to guarantee a brighter future for generations yet unborn.
Mr. President, I must emphasize that if this problem is not tackled expeditiously and firmly now, it would in the long run be more dangerous than any other challenges facing this nation, including the insurgency and other forms of security challenges that are confronting us today.
The office of the SGF is to coordinate the activities of the two committees at the federal level, while states are advised to set up their implementation committees as well as corresponding local government structures in view of the need for a nationwide collaborative approach. From the State House, Adamu Sambo, NTA News.
Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed has again cautioned the media to be wary of purview of fake news. The minister handed down the reminder during an interactive session with newsmen in Abuja. Anthony Forsen reports.
Information and Culture Minister Lai Mohammed said the reminder has become necessary, given a fake report credited to him as saying President Muhammadu Buhari has lost his memory after he went for medication abroad.
Absolutely false. It's untrue. But you see, what bothers me is that it's not going to stop. You will hear more incredulous fake news.
He called on the media to be wary, not to be used by those he described as desperate opposition.
They know that they cannot debate on issues. And they have resorted to fabricating fake news.
Responding to questions on the state of the nation and the electoral bill, given the fact that the 2019 election is near, the minister said the federal government is doing all within its mandate to ensure free, fair and credible election. On allegation that President Muhammadu Buhari has been cloned, the minister expressed shock that people could concoct such falsehood.
You see, even the source of the story itself should be, is something that you should consider, honestly. But do you think the 6 man will be so stupid, none of us will be able to know that we are talking to a clone person?
Reacting to former President Olusegun Obasanjo's support for former Vice President Atiku Abubakar and other allegations against the present administration, Lai Mohammed said the ruling All Progressives Congress will not lose sleep over the matter.
With due respect to the former President Obasanjo, nobody expects, I mean, you see, actually it is his constitutional right to support any candidate of his choice. And we urge him to go out and campaign vigorously for any candidate that he wants to support. I don't think the former president has hidden his preference for the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar. And I think we all will wish him the very best of luck. But I want to assure you that his candidate will be defeated roundly and comprehensively.
In Abuja, Anthony Forsen, NTA News.
Ahead of the 2019 general elections, Muslim faithful have been advised to shun activities that can be counterproductive to national interest. The founder of Lutfullah International, Sheikh Mohammed Rabiu Abdul Malik, gave the advice at a 2-day prayer session organized to celebrate the birth of Prophet Muhammad. Hawal Yusuf Jibo reports that the Executive Director of Finance of the Nigerian Television Authority, Fatima Bada, represented the Director General, Yakub Ibn Mohammed.
Sheikh Mohammed Rabiu Abdul Malik emphasized the need for Nigerians to imbibe the spirit of peaceful coexistence as the nation prepares for the general elections.
We have dedicated this year's prayers to ushering peaceful election come 2019 because we need peace and we have no power. The only power we have is the power of God Almighty.
We want all the Nigerians to call on Almighty Allah to please be in our midst before, during, and after the election.
Muslim clerics further stressed the need to give priority to good neighborliness. They are also advised to emulate the Prophet Muhammad in service to humanity.
He's the one that God sent to mankind to take us away from the path of disobedience, to guide us to the path of righteousness, obedience to God, to serve the only true God, Allah.
So if you have the love that He has, and we also use it around ourselves, we will have a good society.
Prophet Muhammad was born in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, to Abdullah and Amina. His birthday celebrations, known in Islam as Maulud al-Nabi, is celebrated across the world to remind Muslims of the need to imbibe his virtues. He started preaching at the age of 40 and did so for 23 years. He died at the age of 63. In Lagos, Awal Yusuf Jibo, NTA News.
That's Panorama for today from the Lagos Network Center. Thank you for watching and keep watching the NTA. Good afternoon.
On Ubongo.